Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Earth's Luna station, watching the blue marble of her homeworld slowly rotate below. The peaceful view did nothing to calm the storm brewing in her mind. In her hand, she held a message that would change everything for humanity. The transmission had arrived 3 days ago through official diplomatic channels. The Galactic Council, a group of alien civilizations that ruled most of the known galaxy, had sent Earth an ultimatum. The message was clear and cold. Humanity had broken galactic law. They wanted one human representative to come and face trial. If Earth refused, all human worlds would be cut off from the galaxy forever. Sarah read the message again, even though she had memorized every word. The Council accused humanity of 3 major crimes. First, humans had expanded into star systems without permission. Second, they had interfered with primitive alien species. Third, they had built too many military bases and weapons. The accusations made Sarah angry. Every human colony had been carefully placed in empty star systems. No alien species lived there. The Council had never told humanity which systems they could or could not use. As for interfering with primitive species, humans had only helped those who asked for aid. The Council had abandoned these species long ago, leaving them to suffer and die. The military bases were built for protection, not attack, but the Council did not care about the truth. They saw humans as dangerous primitives who had somehow stumbled into space travel. To them, humanity was just another young species that needed to be controlled. The United Colonies government had debated for hours about how to respond. Some leaders wanted to refuse the summons and prepare for war. Others believed they should send a diplomat to try to make peace. In the end, they chose Sarah. Sarah was not just a soldier. She had spent years studying alien cultures and languages. She had negotiated peace treaties with hostile species. She had also commanded fleets in battle when diplomacy failed. If anyone could represent humanity before the Council, it was her. But Sarah carried more than just diplomatic credentials. Hidden in her personal files was classified information that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. For decades, humanity had been much more advanced than they appeared. The primitive technology that aliens saw was just a mask. Underneath, human science had progressed far beyond what the Council imagined. The deception had started by accident. When humans first made contact with alien species, they realized something important. The aliens looked down on any species they considered less advanced. They treated such species as children at best or threats at worst. So humanity chose to appear weaker than they really were. Human ships looked crude and simple from the outside, but inside, they contained technology that could match or beat anything the Council had. Human colonies appeared to be struggling settlements. In reality, they were carefully planned cities with hidden defenses. Human military forces seemed small and basic. The truth was that every human soldier carried weapons that could level mountains. The masquerade had worked perfectly for over 50 years. The Council ignored humanity most of the time, seeing them as harmless newcomers. This gave humans the freedom to explore, expand, and grow stronger without interference. But now the game was ending. Sarah's personal communicator buzzed. A message from General Martinez appeared on the screen. "The transport is ready, Commander. Are you prepared for this?" Sarah took one last look at Earth. She might never see her homeworld again. If the trial went badly, the Council might execute her as an example. If it went very badly, they might declare war on all of humanity. "I'm ready, General," she replied. The journey to the Council's central station would take 2 weeks in hyperspace. Sarah used the time to review her strategy. She could not reveal humanity's true strength too early. The Council needed to condemn themselves first. Only then could she show them their mistake. The files she carried contained proof of the Council's real crimes. For 1,000 years, they had suppressed younger species. They hoarded advanced technology, while letting entire civilizations die from diseases that could be easily cured. They divided up the galaxy among themselves and forced other species to live in designated areas like prisoners. The Council claimed to maintain peace, but they really maintained their own power. Any species that grew too strong was destroyed or enslaved. Any species that refused to obey was quarantined until they starved. The Council was not a force for good. They were galactic tyrants who had fooled themselves into believing they were righteous. Sarah's ship, the UCS Defiant, looked like a typical human vessel from the outside. It had rough metal plating and simple weapons, but hidden beneath the surface were systems that could fool any Council scanner. The ship's true capabilities were invisible to alien sensors. Captain Rodriguez, the ship's commander, joined Sarah in her quarters on the final day of the journey. "Commander, are you sure about this plan?" "Once you activate the protocol, there's no going back," Sarah nodded. "The Council has made their choice, Captain. They've decided to treat humanity as a threat. We might as well give them a real one." The protocol Sarah mentioned was classified at the highest levels. Only a dozen people in human space knew it existed. Protocol 77 Alpha was humanity's ultimate contingency plan. If the species ever faced extinction, the protocol would reveal their true power to the galaxy. "The Council thinks they're dealing with primitive humans," Sarah continued. "They're about to learn that they've been watching the wrong species all along." As the Defiant dropped out of hyperspace, Sarah saw the Council's central station for the first time. It was massive beyond imagination. The station was larger than Earth's moon, with docking bays that could hold 1,000 ships. Millions of aliens lived and worked inside its metal walls. The station was a symbol of the Council's power. Every advanced species in the galaxy had contributed to its construction. It housed the greatest technologies and the wisest minds of dozens of civilizations, or so the Council believed. Sarah smiled as she watched alien ships moving around the station. None of them noticed the small human reconnaissance drones that had been monitoring the station for months. None of them detected the hidden transmitters that human agents had planted throughout the structure. The Council's greatest stronghold was already compromised, and they had no idea. "Incoming transmission from Council Security," announced the ship's communications officer. Sarah straightened her uniform and walked to the bridge. "Put them on screen." An alien face appeared on the main display. The creature had blue skin and 4 eyes, marking it as a member of the Zalari species. The Zalari had been among the Council's founders and considered themselves superior to most other species. "Human vessel, you will dock at Bay 77 and submit to full security scanning. The defendant will be escorted to detention until the trial begins." Sarah kept her expression calm. "Understood. The United Colonies of Earth will comply with Council protocols." As the Defiant moved toward the docking bay, Sarah made a mental note. Bay 77. Even the Council's choice of docking bay showed their contempt. It was located in the station's waste processing section, as far from the important areas as possible. Perfect. Let them think they were dealing with a primitive species. Let them believe humanity was weak and helpless. Their arrogance would be their downfall. The trial would begin in 6 hours. By the time it ended, the galaxy would never be the same. The Council's tribunal chamber was designed to intimidate. Sarah Chen walked through massive doors that stood 30 feet tall, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above, while 12 floating platforms arranged in a semicircle held the judges who would decide humanity's fate. Each platform represented one of the Council's founding species. The judges looked down at Sarah from their elevated positions, their alien faces showing emotions that ranged from boredom to disgust. In the center sat High Arbiter Vexithul, a tall gray creature with 6 arms and eyes like black diamonds. Sarah took her place at the defendant's podium, a simple metal stand that seemed tiny beneath the towering alien tribunal. She wore her dress uniform, displaying the medals she had earned during 20 years of service. The aliens probably saw them as primitive decorations. They had no idea that each medal represented a victory against forces that would have challenged the Council itself. "The tribunal recognizes the defendant," Vexthul announced, his voice booming through hidden speakers. "State your identity for the record." "Commander Sarah Chen, United Colonies of Earth Defense Force, representing humanity before this tribunal." Sarah's voice was steady and clear. "The charges against the human species are as follows," Vexthul continued. "First, unauthorized territorial expansion beyond designated boundaries. Second, violation of the non-interference directive regarding primitive civilizations. Third, excessive militarization in violation of galactic peace accords." Sarah listened without emotion as the prosecutor, a slug-like creature called Morvac, began presenting the Council's case. Holographic displays showed human colonies that had been established in the past 50 years. Red warning symbols marked each location as an illegal settlement. "The humans have established over 200 colonies without Council approval," Morvac declared. "They have claimed entire star systems as their territory, ignoring the rights of older species." Sarah almost laughed. The older species had never visited those systems. They were empty space containing nothing but planets waiting for life to discover them. The Council claimed ownership of systems they had never even explored, simply because they existed. The prosecutor moved to the second charge. New holograms appeared, showing human medical ships providing aid to struggling alien civilizations. The images were edited to make the humans look like conquerors instead of helpers. Humans have interfered with the natural development of 7 primitive species, Morvac continued. They have provided advanced technology and medical treatment, disrupting the natural order. Sarah knew the real story behind those images. The colony had been dying from a plague that their own immune systems could not fight. Human doctors had developed a cure in 3 weeks and distributed it freely. The Threks were facing extinction from asteroid impacts on their homeworld. Human engineers had built them planetary defense systems and asked for nothing in return. All 7 species had asked for help. Their own requests were recorded in the Council's own files. But the Council had ignored them, following a policy that let primitive species live or die based on their own capabilities. Humanity had chosen a different path. The third charge was the most ridiculous of all. The prosecutor showed images of human military bases and defense stations. The weapons looked crude and basic compared to Council technology. If only they knew the truth. The humans have constructed military installations throughout their territory, Morvac said. These bases serve no defensive purpose and can only be intended for aggressive expansion. Judge Corax, an insect-like creature with glowing red eyes, leaned forward on his platform. Defendant, how do you answer these charges? Sarah stepped closer to the podium. This was the moment she had prepared for. Honorable judges, humanity stands accused of crimes we did not commit. We are guilty only of misunderstanding by those who never bothered to learn the truth about us. The facts speak clearly, interrupted Judge Zilani, her blue tentacles waving in dismissal. Your species has violated galactic law repeatedly. What law? Sarah asked. Show me the statute that forbids colonizing empty star systems. Show me the regulation that prevents helping dying civilizations. Show me the treaty that limits defensive preparations. The judges exchanged glances. Sarah had hit on the Council's greatest weakness. Most of their laws were not laws at all, but traditions and assumptions that had never been formally codified. Sarah continued her defense, presenting evidence that the tribunal clearly did not want to hear. Human colonies had been established only in uninhabited systems, following detailed surveys that proved no other species claimed them. Human aid to primitive civilizations had been provided only when requested, and only to save lives. Human military installations were purely defensive, designed to protect colonists from raiders and hostile forces. The Council accuses humanity of aggression, Sarah said. But we have never attacked another species without provocation. We have never claimed territory that belonged to others. We have never refused aid to those who asked for help. High Arbiter Vexthul raised one of his 6 hands. The defendant's protests are noted but irrelevant. Humans are a young species that lacks the wisdom to understand galactic civilization. Your actions, regardless of intent, threaten the stability that the Council has maintained for 1,000 years. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. What stability? The stability that allows entire species to die while the Council watches? The stability that divides the galaxy among 12 species and leaves hundreds of others as subjects? The stability that calls expansion aggression and mercy interference? The tribunal chamber fell silent. No one had ever challenged the Council's authority so directly in this sacred space. The judges stared at Sarah as if she had grown a second head. Judge Vrextal, a crystalline being that sparkled under the chamber's lights, spoke in a voice like breaking glass. The human shows the exact arrogance that makes her species dangerous. You have been in space for barely a century, yet you presume to judge civilizations that are older than your recorded history. Age does not equal wisdom, Sarah replied, and power does not equal righteousness. The trial continued for 6 more hours. Sarah presented detailed evidence of humanity's peaceful intentions and defensive actions. She showed records of aid given freely to species the Council had abandoned. She demonstrated that every human expansion had been carefully planned to avoid conflict with existing civilizations. The judges ignored everything she said. They had made their decision before the trial began. Sarah could see it in their eyes, in the way they dismissed her evidence without examination, in the contempt they showed for anything connected to humanity. Finally, High Arbiter Vexthul called for the tribunal's decision. The 12 judges activated their private communication network, speaking in alien languages that Sarah was not supposed to understand. They did not know that she spoke all 12 languages fluently, or that human technology was recording every word. The primitive species must be contained, Judge Korak said in his clicking language. They grow too quickly and think too independently. Agreed, replied Judge Zelani in her melodic tongue. Better to stop them now before they become a real threat. The sentence should be severe, added Judge Vrextal. Other young species must see what happens to those who challenge the natural order. Sarah listened to their discussion with growing satisfaction. They were condemning themselves with their own words, proving that this trial was not about justice but about maintaining their power over other species. When the private discussion ended, High Arbiter Vexthal stood on his platform. The chamber's lights dimmed, focusing all attention on the chief judge. The tribunal has reached its verdict, he announced. On all charges, the human species is found guilty. Sarah bowed her head, playing the role of a defeated defendant. Inside, she was smiling. The sentence is as follows, Vexthal continued. Humanity will be confined to the Sol system under permanent quarantine. All human colonies beyond Sol will be evacuated within 1 standard year. Any human vessel attempting to leave the Sol system will be destroyed without warning. The judges looked pleased with themselves. They believed they had solved the human problem with wisdom and restraint. They had no idea they had just declared war on a species that had been preparing for this moment for decades. Does the defendant have any final words? Vexthal asked. Sarah raised her head and looked directly at the High Arbiter. Yes, Your Honor. I do. Sarah Chen stood quietly at the defendant's podium as the Galactic Council judges congratulated themselves on their wise decision. Their alien faces showed satisfaction and relief. They believed they had successfully contained another dangerous, primitive species before it could threaten their 1,000-year. Rule High Arbiter Vexthal was already reaching for his ceremonial gavel to close the proceedings when Sarah spoke again. Your Honors, I request permission to address this tribunal one final time. Vexthal paused, his 6 arms frozen in mid-motion. The trial is concluded, defendant. The verdict has been rendered. I understand that, Your Honor. But according to Council Procedure 447 Alpha, the defendant has the right to make a final statement before sentencing is officially recorded. Sarah's voice remained calm and respectful. The judges exchanged uncertain looks. Most of them had forgotten the old procedures that governed tribunal proceedings. Those rules had been written centuries ago when the council still pretended to care about fairness and justice. Judge Korax checked his records with quick, nervous movements of his insect-like appendages. After a moment, he clicked in annoyance. The human is correct. The procedure still exists in our legal framework. Very well, Vexthal said with obvious irritation. You may speak, but be brief. Sarah bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Honor. I will keep my remarks short and to the point. She walked to the center of the chamber, directly beneath the semicircle of floating judicial platforms. The spotlights followed her, creating a dramatic scene that would be remembered for centuries to come. Honorable judges of the Galactic Council, Sarah began, you have found humanity guilty of crimes we did not commit. You have sentenced my species to imprisonment for the crime of existing without your permission. You have declared that we are too dangerous to be allowed freedom in the galaxy we call home. She paused, letting her words echo in the vast chamber. The judges waited impatiently for her to finish so they could end this unpleasant business. I accept your verdict, Sarah continued, but I want you to understand exactly what you have done here today. You have not contained a primitive species. You have not prevented a future threat. You have not maintained galactic stability. Sarah's voice grew stronger, carrying clearly to every corner of the chamber. What you have done is declare war on a civilization that has been studying you for over a century. What you have done is threaten a species that has been preparing for this exact moment since the day we first encountered your representatives. The judges began to look uncomfortable. This was not how defeated primitives were supposed to behave. They were supposed to beg for mercy or rage helplessly at their fate. You see, honored judges, humanity has a saying, know your enemy. We have followed that advice very carefully. While you ignored us as harmless primitives, we learned everything about you. While you dismissed our technology as crude and simple, we studied your most advanced systems. While you assumed we were weak and isolated, we prepared for the day you would show your true nature. High Arbiter Vexthal leaned forward on his platform. What are you implying, human? Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. I'm not implying anything, Your Honor. I'm stating facts. The Galactic Council has just declared war on a species that knows all of your military capabilities, all of your political weaknesses, and all of your dirty secrets. She reached into her uniform jacket and withdrew a small device that looked like a simple communication tablet. The council guards tensed, but their scanners had already cleared the device as harmless electronics. This tribunal has been broadcast live throughout the galaxy, as required by council law, Sarah said. Every species, every civilization, every colony world has just witnessed this proceeding. They have seen the council's true face. They have heard you condemn humanity for crimes that were not crimes, for actions that harmed no one except your own power. Judge Zilani's tentacles writhed in agitation. Enough of these theatrics. Security removed the defendant. Not quite yet, Sarah said, holding up the device. You see, this contains more than just communication equipment. This contains 137 years of intelligence gathering. Every council meeting that you thought was private, every military secret that you thought was secure, every crime that you thought was hidden. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the background hum of the station system seemed to pause. Sarah activated the device and holographic displays filled the air around her. The images showed council forces destroying helpless colonies, council leaders dividing up conquered territories, council scientists developing weapons of mass destruction for use against primitive species. The Morthak genocide of 2847, Sarah announced, as images of burning cities appeared above her head. 70 million dead because they refused to give up their homeworld. The council told the galaxy they died from natural disasters. New images replaced the old ones, showing council ships bombarding defenseless planets, the Kelthak sterilization of 2863, and entire species wiped out because they developed faster-than-light travel without council permission. The official records claim they destroyed themselves in a civil war. More evidence appeared, file after file of council atrocities committed over the centuries. The judges watched in growing horror as their darkest secrets were revealed to the galaxy. Stop this immediately, Vexthal commanded. Guards, destroy that device, Sarah laughed, a sound that sent chills through every alien in the chamber. Destroy it if you want. This information has already been transmitted to every news network, every government, every rebel group in the galaxy. Within hours, trillions of beings will know exactly what kind of monsters have been ruling them. The council guards moved toward Sarah, but she held up one hand to stop them. I wouldn't do that if I were you, she said calmly. You see, this little device has one more function. It's a quantum communicator, linked directly to Earth's defense network. All I have to do is enter a simple code, and my government will receive a very important message. Sarah looked up at the terrified judges on their floating platforms. The code is called Protocol 77 Alpha. It's our contingency plan for exactly this situation. The moment I transmit those numbers, every human ship in the galaxy will reveal its true capabilities. Every human colony will activate its hidden defenses. Every human agent embedded in your governments and military forces will begin their real mission. Judge Korax clicked frantically. Impossible. We monitor all human communications. We know the location of every human ship. Do you? Sarah asked. Are you absolutely certain of that? Because our intelligence suggests that you've been watching decoys for the past 50 years. Those crude human ships you've been tracking. Most of them are empty drones broadcasting fake life signs. The real human fleet has been hidden where you would never think to look. She gestured toward the massive viewports that showed the space around the council station. They're here, right now, watching this trial. Invisible to your sensors, undetectable by your technology, waiting for my signal. The chamber erupted in chaos. Judges shouted orders in a dozen alien languages. Security forces rushed toward control panels, desperately trying to scan the space around the station. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Sarah stood calmly in the center of the pandemonium, still holding her communicator. You wanted to know about human aggression, she said, her voice somehow carrying over the noise. You wanted to understand human expansion. You wanted to judge human intentions. She looked directly at High Arbiter Vexthal, who was frantically communicating with his fleet commanders. Here's what you should have learned before you condemned my species. Humans don't start fights, but we always finish them. Sarah's finger moved toward the transmit button on her device. The question now is simple. Do you want to continue this war you've just declared? Or do you want to hear our terms for peace? The alarms continued to blare, as the most powerful beings in the galaxy realized they had just made the worst mistake in their civilization's history. Sarah Chen watched the chaos erupt around her as Galactic Council security forces scrambled to respond to her revelation. Alarms wailed throughout the massive station, while judges shouted conflicting orders from their floating platforms. In the center of it all, Sarah stood perfectly calm, her finger poised over the transmit button of her quantum communicator. High Arbiter Vexthul was screaming at his military advisors through his personal comm unit. "Find those human ships. Scan every cubic meter of space around this station. Use gravitational detectors, quantum resonance scanners, everything we have." The response came back negative. No human vessels were detected anywhere in the system. Judge Korax clicked his mandibles in agitation. "The human is bluffing. There are no ships. She's trying to frighten us with empty threats." Sarah smiled at the insect-like judge. "Your sensors can't detect what isn't there to detect, Judge Korax. But I assure you, 37 human vessels are currently within weapons range of this station. Would you like me to prove it?" Before anyone could respond, Sarah pressed the transmit button. The message that shot through quantum space was simple. Protocol 77 Alpha. Those 4 words would change the galaxy forever. On Earth, the coded transmission triggered automated systems that had been waiting for decades. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, a massive computer complex received the signal and began executing instructions that had been programmed by humanity's greatest strategic minds. Within seconds, similar signals flashed out to every human colony, every human ship, and every human agent in known space. The message was always the same. The masquerade was over. The first sign of change came from the space around the Council station itself. Where Sarah's sensors had shown empty space moments before, massive shapes began to shimmer into existence. The human ships had been there all along, hidden by stealth technology that made them completely invisible to Council detection systems. The UCS Retribution appeared first, its sleek black hull materializing like a ghost-made solid. The ship was 3 times larger than any Council vessel, bristling with weapons that radiated barely contained energy. More ships followed, the Vengeance, the Reckoning, the Final Judgment. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering, combining technologies that the Council didn't even know existed. In the tribunal chamber, view screens automatically activated to show the space around the station. Judge Zelani's tentacles went completely still as she watched the human fleet reveal itself. "Impossible," she whispered. "How long have they been there?" "Since before I arrived," Sarah answered. "They've been recording every moment of this trial. The galaxy is watching, Your Honor. They're seeing the Council's true nature, and they're seeing humanity's response to your aggression." High Arbiter Vexthul activated his comm unit again. "Fleet Command, destroy those human ships immediately." The response made his gray skin turn even paler. "Sir, our weapon systems are not responding. All defense platforms report total system failure." Sarah's smile grew wider. "Did I forget to mention? Human technicians have been working on this station for months. Every major system has been quietly modified. Your weapons can't fire. Your shields can't activate. Your communication arrays can only send messages that we allow. But the real shock was yet to come. Throughout the galaxy, other human ships were dropping their disguises and revealing their true nature. The rusty cargo vessel near Proxima Station transformed into a heavily armed battlecruiser. The simple mining ship in the Vega system revealed weapon arrays that could level planets. Hundreds of civilian human vessels suddenly became the most advanced military fleet the galaxy had ever seen. The Council's own communication networks exploded with panicked reports from across their territory. Every major world, every important space station, every critical military installation found itself under the guns of ships that had appeared from nowhere. But these were not acts of aggression. The human ships made no hostile moves. They simply appeared, waited, and watched. The message was clear. We could destroy you if we wanted to, but we choose not to. On the Council world of Xerion Prime, Governor Malthus stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 12 human ships hung in orbit around his planet, their weapons trained on major population centers. But instead of attacking, they broadcast a simple message: stay calm. Remain in your homes. This is not an invasion. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The human fleet had positioned itself to neutralize every major Council stronghold simultaneously. It was a display of tactical planning and strategic thinking that left Council military experts speechless. Back in the tribunal chamber, Sarah continued her explanation while chaos swirled around her. For 50 years, the Council has believed they were monitoring humanity's expansion. You thought you knew where our colonies were, how many ships we had, what our technology could do. You were wrong about everything. She gestured toward the view screen showing the human fleet. Every primitive human vessel you've seen was a decoy. The real human fleet has been building and training in systems you never knew existed. We found empty regions of space between spiral arms, places where your explorers never bothered to go. While you watched our fake colonies struggle with basic survival, our real settlements were becoming centers of advanced research and industrial production. Judge Rextal's crystalline body flickered with nervous energy. How many ships do you really have? Enough, Sarah replied. More than enough. The truth was staggering. Humanity's real fleet consisted of over 3,000 vessels, each one more advanced than anything in the Council's navy. Human colonies numbered in the hundreds, not dozens, spread across regions of space the Council had never explored. The human population was not the 50 million that Council census data showed, but over 2 billion people living and working throughout the galaxy. But ships and numbers are not what make humanity dangerous, Sarah continued. What makes us dangerous is that we learn from our enemies. For a century, we've been studying your tactics, your technology, your politics, and your weaknesses. She activated her communicator again, displaying new information on the chamber's holographic projectors. We know about the rebellion brewing on Thaxos Prime. We know about the independence movement in the Cygnus sector. We know about the growing dissatisfaction among your own member species. Most importantly, we know about the dozens of species you've oppressed, enslaved, or destroyed. The holographs showed detailed intelligence reports on political unrest throughout Council space. Species that had been conquered centuries ago were secretly organizing resistance movements. Member worlds were questioning their loyalty to the Council. Even some founding species were beginning to doubt the righteousness of their 1,000-year rule. The galaxy is ready for change, Sarah declared. It has been ready for decades. All it needed was someone strong enough to lead that change. High Arbiter Vexthal finally managed to regain some composure. What do you want, human? Sarah looked up at the 12 judges who had condemned her species just minutes earlier. We want exactly what you tried to deny us. Freedom. The right to exist without your permission. The right to help other species without your interference. The right to live in a galaxy where justice matters more than power. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we're not just demanding these rights for humanity. We're demanding them for every species in the galaxy. The age of Council dominance is over. The age of galactic democracy is about to begin. Judge Corax clicked frantically. You cannot simply overthrow the natural order. Chaos will consume the galaxy. The only chaos, Sarah replied, will be in your attempts to maintain power you no longer deserve. As if to emphasize her point, new reports flooded into the chamber. Across Council space, oppressed species were rising up against their occupiers. Weapons and tactical support were mysteriously appearing in the hands of freedom fighters. Council garrisons found themselves cut off from reinforcement and resupply. The human fleet was not just revealing itself. It was coordinating the largest liberation movement in galactic history. Your choice is simple, Sarah told the stunned tribunal. Surrender your power voluntarily and help create a new galactic government based on equality and justice. Or resist and watch your empire crumble around you. The chamber fell silent except for the continuing alarms. 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy stared at a single human woman who had just declared their reign over. Outside the station, the human fleet waited patiently for their answer. 3 months had passed since Sarah Chen transmitted Protocol 77 Alpha from the Galactic Council's tribunal chamber. The galaxy was a very different place now. Sarah stood once again in the same chamber where she had been condemned as a criminal, but everything had changed. The floating platforms that once held arrogant judges now hosted representatives from over 200 species. The intimidating architecture remained the same, but the atmosphere was completely different. Where once there had been the suffocating weight of ancient tyranny, now there was the electric energy of new possibilities. The transformation had not been without violence. Several council member species had chosen to resist the new order, believing their superior technology and experience would allow them to crush the human-led rebellion. They had learned too late that humanity's century of preparation had included more than just military planning. The Battle of Xerion Prime lasted only 6 hours. Council forces found their communications jammed, their weapons malfunctioning, and their ships mysteriously experiencing critical system failures at the worst possible moments. Human cyber warfare capabilities turned the Council's own technology against them. When the fighting ended, The once mighty Xerion defense fleet was floating dead in space while human ships remained untouched. The siege of Vorthon Station had been even more decisive. Council Admiral Krextel had boasted that his fortress was impregnable, protected by shields that could stop a supernova. He did not know that human engineers had been working on his station for 2 years, installing hidden devices in every critical system. When the human fleet arrived, Krextal's shields failed, his weapons powered down, and his life support began cycling randomly between freezing cold and scorching heat. He surrendered within an hour, but the most shocking victory had been at Thanros Prime, the heavily defended homeworld of Judge Korax's species. The planet had been surrounded by defensive platforms, protected by energy barriers, and guarded by the largest fleet in Council space. The human attack never came. Instead, the planet's own defense systems turned on each other in a spectacular display of programmed chaos. Ships collided with space stations, defensive platforms fired on their own allies, and the great energy barriers collapsed under feedback loops that human hackers had planted years earlier. Not all Council species chose to fight. High Arbiter Vexthul, after watching 3 major strongholds fall without the humans losing a single ship, had made the pragmatic choice to negotiate. Judge Zelani's people had actually welcomed the human liberation, revealing that they had been planning their own rebellion for decades. Judge Vrextel's crystalline species had simply vanished from their homeworld, retreating to dimensional refuges that no one else could reach. The species that surrendered were treated with unexpected mercy. Human forces had strict orders to minimize casualties and protect civilian populations. Former Council worlds found themselves under new management, but their people were free to continue their lives under the protection of the new galactic government. The species that resisted to the end faced a different fate. Their military forces were completely dismantled, their leaders put on trial for crimes against galactic civilization, and their worlds placed under careful supervision until new democratic governments could be established. Sarah walked to the central podium where she had once stood as a defendant. Today she addressed the chamber as the first elected president of the Galactic Democratic Union, chosen by representatives from every free species in known space. Fellow sentients, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. 6 months ago, the old council declared that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed freedom. They were right, but not in the way they intended. Scattered laughter rippled through the assembled delegates. The irony was not lost on anyone present. We were dangerous to their tyranny. We were dangerous to their system of oppression. We were dangerous to their belief that power belonged only to the strong and the ancient. Sarah looked out at the faces before her, representing hundreds of species that had lived under council rule for centuries. Some were familiar humanoid forms, others were completely alien, but all shared the same expression of hope mixed with cautious optimism. The transition has not been easy, Sarah continued. Replacing a 1,000-year-old system of government is never simple. There have been mistakes, conflicts, and moments when the future seemed uncertain. But we have persevered because we share a common goal. A galaxy where all species are equal, where justice is based on law rather than power, and where freedom is a right, not a privilege. She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of galactic civilization. Green indicators marked worlds that had successfully transitioned to democratic government. Yellow showed regions still in transition. Red marked the few remaining holdouts that refused to acknowledge the new order. Today, over 90% of known space operates under democratic principles. Species that were once enemies are learning to work together. Technologies that were hoarded by the council elite are being shared freely. Scientific discoveries that might have taken centuries under the old system are happening in months. The progress had been remarkable. Medical advances that could have saved billions of lives had been locked away in council vaults, deemed too dangerous for primitive species. Human scientists had released these discoveries immediately, causing a renaissance of health and longevity throughout the galaxy. Agricultural techniques that could turn barren worlds into gardens had been restricted to council member species. Now they were available to anyone who needed them. But our greatest achievement, Sarah said, is not technological or political. Our greatest achievement is proving that different species can coexist without domination. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us. She paused, remembering the dark days when war seemed inevitable. There are those who say we should have been satisfied with our own freedom. They argue that humanity should have negotiated for better treatment, rather than overthrowing the entire system. To those critics, I say this: freedom that depends on the mercy of tyrants is not freedom at all. The chamber erupted in applause. Many of the delegates represented species that had been on the Council's list for elimination or enslavement. They understood that their survival depended on the complete destruction of the old order. The Galactic Democratic Union is not perfect, Sarah admitted, as the applause died down. No government can be perfect when it must serve so many different needs and cultures. But it is fair, and it grows stronger every day. She gestured toward the viewing ports that showed space around the station. Where once only Council ships had been allowed, now vessels from dozens of species moved freely in peaceful cooperation. Some ask me if humanity regrets the deception we maintained for so long. They wonder if we should have revealed our true capabilities earlier, perhaps preventing the crisis that brought us to war. Sarah shook her head. We regret nothing. The galaxy needed to see the Council's true nature. They needed to condemn themselves with their own words and actions. If we had revealed our strength too early, they might have found ways to accommodate us while maintaining their oppression of others. Instead, they showed the entire galaxy exactly what they were: bullies who could not tolerate any challenge to their power. The holographic display changed to show historical footage from Sarah's original trial. The images of Council judges dismissing evidence and ignoring justice served as a permanent reminder of why the old system had to fall. The Council's greatest mistake was believing their own propaganda. They convinced themselves that might made right, that age granted wisdom, and that other species existed to serve their purposes. When they encountered a species that refused to accept these beliefs, they could not imagine any response except force. Sarah looked directly at the section where former Council species sat as delegates in the new government. Most had adapted well to their reduced status, finding that actual equality was more satisfying than the constant stress of maintaining dominance. Today marks the end of our transition period, Sarah announced. As of this moment, the Galactic Democratic Union assumes full authority over all former Council territories. Emergency powers are hereby dissolved. The era of human guardianship is over. The era of true galactic democracy begins now. The chamber exploded in celebration. Delegates from hundreds of worlds cheered in dozens of languages, their voices creating a symphony of joy that echoed throughout the station. But even in this moment of triumph, Sarah's thoughts turned to the future. The galaxy was free, but freedom brought new challenges. Species that had been enemies for millennia would need to learn cooperation. Resources that had been distributed by Council decree would now need to be allocated fairly. Most difficult of all, humanity would need to step back from its role as liberator and become simply one voice among many in the galactic community. The hardest part was yet to come, proving that the new system could survive without the species that had created it. As the celebration continued around her, Sarah allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had faced its greatest test and emerged victorious. They had been called too dangerous for freedom,